Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Hack TV, brought to you by Verizon and the August Project, as well as the Haitian American Caucus. Today, in today's segment, it's called Who You Callin' a B Word. And this conversation is going to talk about the use of language, passive sayings, and phrases that kind of maintain violence within the home. In light of Domestic Violence Awareness Month, we are bringing different conversations in this series, and we just wanted to talk about where things start in the home and what's what's permissible and what's not permissible, what's appropriate and what's not appropriate. And here today, who we have to talk about this is the illustrious, the world-renowned vocal coach, Twyla Joy. She's an amazing person. She has traveled the world to teach so many different people in voice and in music. She has a well-rounded view of many things as far as insights in different cultures within the African American community. She's going to bring some great insight to this conversation, and I'm extremely excited to have her on here today, Twyla Joy.
Hello, Francois. Thank you for having me, and thank you for such a wonderful intro. That was really kind. I appreciate you.
All I did was just read the bio. I just read the bio. That's all I did. You are amazing. It's a pleasure to have you. I know that you just did like 2 years in Guyana recently to do some teaching out there, correct?
Yes, I did. I was living in Guyana for 2 years. I was at first volunteering, and then I took on a position and was supervising teachers that were teaching music there. We were teaching voice, piano, guitar, saxophone, percussion. It was a music school that we started in Guyana. It was really a powerful thing. Yeah.
That's pretty amazing. That's pretty amazing. What I really want to touch on, given light of the conversation, so we've been doing a series on domestic violence and the different faces of domestic violence, but this today's series is we're gonna hone in on the language used at home, the sayings, the
Mhm.
phrases, the passive aggressive language that is used that maintains that status quo of violence in the home. You being raised in New York, being
Right.
travel around the world, teaching people within their homes, seeing how they interact. I thought it'd be appropriate for you to lend an insightful your insightful expertise into this conversation, because I think that you're gonna be able to give us a twist on things that I'm not privy to. I haven't traveled in many places as you and been in the homes of these people. It's not that you just travel to these places. You've been in these people's homes and you know their customs, you understand their culture, which is super amazing. One thing I wanted to ask you was let's just start with upbringing in America, the Black community in New York. Let's start in New York. Let's start small and then we'll branch out.
Okay.
Uh,
Okay.
let's start small and then we'll branch out. Being a young man, being a young woman, and we were talking earlier about this. Um, our first introduction to quote unquote intimacy or someone liking you is if the boy is bothering you, he likes you.
Right. Right. So
If
that's the perfect way to start.
right,
That's a perfect way to start because you're taught. I mean, there's this boy, he picks on you, or he pulls your hair, he pinches you, he might even hit your butt. That was a thing growing up. It was, boys hitting girls' butts, etc. And when you complain about it, it's, oh, don't worry, that means he likes you. So it's kind of like, oh,
right.
okay. So our first understanding of what is okay or what is acceptable for how a person that likes you should behave is to be physical with you in a violent fashion. And that might sound like, oh, that's extra, but no, like
Exactly.
really think about how confusing that could be. You know what I mean? Where you're taught when you have friends to share, you're taught not to hit or hurt your friends. You're taught to be kind, right? You're taught to be loving. But then if someone likes you, You know what I'm saying? Which is some people see it as an even deeper relationship than just friendship. That they're allowed to be that way towards you. They're allowed to be physical in a hurtful way. So,
Right.
that can be so confusing. And I wanted to point something out about what you said, about what we let into our household, right? The kind of language.
Hmm.
I grew up in a very, very, very Christian household. Okay. There was no sleepovers. We ain't sleep nowhere else. Okay. We didn't go out. I didn't know what a party was until I was 18 and went away to college. Okay. That's the kind of household, Caribbean household we grew up in. And, it's interesting because, I didn't grow up in a physically violent household, but that language was let in through the music. It was let in through the music that my older brother and sister listened to, through the music videos that we watched when our parents weren't home. You know what I'm
Right.
saying? So even though I didn't experience it personally, I was made privy to it through what was acceptable around the country as okay music to be listening to and okay visuals to experience. So it was let in, even if it wasn't invited.
Right.
It was
So
let
I actually want to pause there for a minute. In a lot of music and a lot of popular hip hop, as you so said it,
in.
because
Hmm.
we used to steal our older cousins and our older brothers' CDs and stuff like that, and it wasn't censored. It wasn't censored back in the day.
It was
So
not.
the B word, because I will not say the word because I feel like my mother will reach down from heaven and slap me. So I will not. I will not. I will refrain from using the word. But the B word, it has been extremely normalized through music, and not only normalized through music, it confused me as to who and when to use that word, because in a song you have somebody saying it and it was all good, but then you have homegirls calling each other, the B word. Yeah, that's my B, so on and so forth, and it was all good. But once someone got upset about something, or male to a female said, "Oh, I can't stand this B," I think the uses of the word in certain contexts is acceptable, and in other contexts is not acceptable. My question to you is, when is it okay for anyone to call anyone a bitch? I
Mm.
just need, because this is the topic of discussion. I just need to know, when is it okay? Like, can I say, yeah, that's my me as a male to you? Be like, yeah, that's my B. Like, yeah. Can I say that? Is that appropriate?
That, you know what, that's a really good question. And honestly, I wish that I could say whatever answer that comes out of my mouth is me speaking for everyone, and it's not. I cannot speak for, I'm not the Black woman delegation. You know what I'm saying? I can't speak for every
Right.
woman. And everybody has different levels of comfort with that term. So, what I'll say for me personally is that it's a term that is, it's so it's tricky. It's tricky, and it's changed over time. You know what I'm saying? Our acceptance of the word and the usage of the word has changed over time. Um, I personally don't like the use of the word. I'm not comfortable with it. My friends generally do not call me that. I do have some friends that use it, and when they do, I just know that it's like it's a term of endearment. They're about to tell me something funny. There's a
Mhm.
video. I don't know if you ever seen it on Instagram and YouTube where it's like the different ways you use it, and depending on the inflection and how you say it, you can know what's about to come next.
Right.
So there's
Right.
it's different. But what I will say is this. Um, I got very accustomed to and comfortable with hearing men say that word in music growing up. It was just
Mm.
like, oh yeah, nah, you're a bad B. That's a good thing. Like you want to be that, But then it's like
Right.
these, these F and Bs, and then it's a negative thing. So in my mind, I was like, okay, I get it when it's good, and I get it when it's not. But either way, it's being used, whatever. But as I have gotten older, hearing any of my male friends say that term makes me cringe. Okay,
Mm.
I've had to check my guy friends like, yo, look, I don't know if it's because I'm older now. I don't know if it's because I just see things differently. Maybe I know myself better. Maybe I'm just more aware of the world and how it works. But I just don't want to hear men saying that term regarding women at all. At all.
So
That's yeah. That's just
I was
me.
going to say, so what? That's it. No, I get it. I get it. But what I'm hearing is you have to be able to read the room when it comes to those
Oh
that
yeah.
uses of that language, uses of that word. You have to be able to read the room and understand your relationship with an individual for you to know what type of autonomy that you have to say, oh, I can call you my B, or should I, are we even at that place where I can use that? Are you even that type of person for me to use that with you? So I guess it has different levels.
Yeah, it has to
But
do
it's
with
not
relationship.
exactly. So it's not only the usage of that word, but it's also the phrases. Like there's different
Mhm.
phrases. Like growing up in the household, we don't realize is abusive. We don't realize is oppressive, domestically. And just so everybody knows, domestic violence is not just a hetero or homosexual intimate relationship. It's not just two people in a relationship abusing each other, whether it be financially, verbally, emotionally. It's not just that. Domestic violence can be from a mother to a daughter, from a daughter to a son, from a father to a son, from a sister to a brother. Anybody who lives under the same household,
Yes.
inflicting financial strife, physical strife, emotional strife, anything of that nature, as was covered in our last segment. We've learned that there are many different facets of domestic violence. With that being said, there are certain things that are said to us as children in our household
Mhm.
that kind of is abusive, but we don't realize it till we get older. Like we don't realize, maybe that wasn't okay when I was younger. Perfect example. I'm Haitian, so
Talk
in
by say.
Haitian culture, Nabule, you already know. But what we there's a saying that we have, like, corporal punishment is what everybody, what Caribbeans, how we raise our children, how we
Mhm.
raise our upbringing. Some people believe in it, some people don't. But the things that sting a little bit more than the physical abuse is what they say to you. Like when your parents are really mad at you, or your sister is really mad at you. Like I had my friend tell me that his mother said, I should have got rid of you.
Mm.
That's heavy. That's heavy.
Mm.
But on a lighter note, this was up to a boiling point. She would always make certain things, was like certain situations was like, why don't you do this? And she would always compare him to certain things and compare him to certain people, and always point out all the negative things. And these phrasings like, oh, you need to get a good job. Why are you such a troublemaker? Like putting labels on her son, my friend.
Yeah.
And Caribbean people are good for that. They're good for putting labels on you. They're good for just what you call it, just attacking you to build you up in their mind. But what they don't understand is there is a psychological breakdown and an emotional breakdown that's happening to you. So what has been your experience with either you observing this or you dealing with this yourself?
Yeah, I before I even answer that, I actually need to retract because I said that I hadn't experienced domestic violence. So in my household, I personally did not. Um, but my oldest sister did. Okay,
Mm,
and my dad was very hard on her, and he definitely crossed the line as far as what was discipline and then what was physical abuse many many times. I had never actually seen it happen, um, but it had happened, and she had said that it's happened, and my older brother had also, confirmed that those things have happened. So I have experienced that. But what I did recall happening in my household is my dad was he was an amazing man, may he rest in peace, a brilliant man, very loving father, but he did not know how to be a father with his first kid. He blew it a lot of times. He did not. He wasn't understanding. He wasn't patient, and he was a math teacher, and so he expected all of us to be good at math. I was good at math, so I was safe. Okay, I mean, if I'd figure out the answer so that I wouldn't get in trouble. But for my other sisters who are terrible at math, I would watch him berate them. I would watch him say, "How can you not figure this out? What's wrong with your head? How can you be so stupid?" You know,
Yes.
things like that.
Yes.
And it's like you don't see how like demeaning and denigrating that is. Like it's so bad. Even thinking about it now, it hurts me. It hurts me to think about that because it's like
Hmm.
you're using this language on a kid. You act like kids not supposed to figure things out. Like they just gonna get it the first time around. And then you understand that it's a cycle, right? Because it's not just
Hmm.
this person is a bad parent. It's this person has to deal with whatever issues they're going through mentally and emotionally, along with the pressure of not having the right financial situation and trying to get that right,
Right.
and not having control over their life the way they wanted to. And now they have to come home
Right.
and sit with you who should be understanding math and you don't. So
Exactly.
there's reasons for it, not to excuse it because it's inexcusable. But the fact is it used to happen and it drives me crazy. And you mentioned something, Frankie. You were talking about how they will say negative things to you almost to lift you up, right?
Right.
Another thing that I've experienced with that has been like just speaking into someone's life in a way that's like in their future in a negative way. Like you're not
Hmm.
gonna grow up to be anything, you know. Or if you keep that up, you're gonna be a nobody. You're gonna turn into a drug addict. You're gonna be selling your body.
Right.
You're doing this. Parents are thinking that they're
Right.
saying these things and it's gonna help and they're gonna realize their error and turn it around. But like no, you're literally speaking negativity and evil into your child's life.
Right. Right.
Period. There's no that's what you're doing. You're literally telling them something negative that they're about to be. We talk about words of affirmation, right? Positive affirmation, how that impacts you. You're doing the exact opposite of that when you do those kind of things. And so, parents are only doing what they was done to them, what they've been taught, what the traditions were. And so, ultimately it's a learning process trying to undo some of those things.
Yeah. So, sorry about that. I was just taking it all in of what you were saying. That is what the household looks in a Caribbean household in America, right? And it we kind of have the privilege that we have in America that they don't have for the people back home or the people in other countries is that there's a way of escape for us, and we have all these rights now that
Mhm.
there's ACS, there's these agencies that we can call if our parents take things too far. But there's a fear, of course, that they instill in us. But what about the countries that don't have an ACS? What about the countries that don't have the resources and the guide, the just the guidance to just address those issues? Like you spent 2 years in Guyana and you've traveled other places. What you have seen firsthand the trauma of students,
Yes.
especially and people that you've dealt with. Could you
Yep.
speak a little bit on that and how that passive language and those just those sayings that are just it's so common, but people don't realize how detrimental they are? Like, could you
Mhm.
just speak on how you've seen that effect unfold in your students' lives and how they were affected in the classroom with you?
Okay. I really appreciate this. This is really good, Frankie. So one thing I want to point out is that I was a teacher. I was teaching folks in Guyana, but I was teaching all ages. Anyone from the community who wanted to learn how to play an instrument, they could come. So I had students that were of age 11 all the way up to 82 years old. So I experienced an array of different people, men, women, and children. The second thing I want to say is that domestic violence happens everywhere. It happens all over the
Yes.
world. It doesn't matter how
Yes.
much money you have, how much status. It doesn't matter how financially stable you are. It doesn't matter how educated you are. It happens in all realms of society. Okay. Um, the third thing I'll say is that in here in the United States, we are much more progressive when it comes to handling domestic violence, when it comes to dealing with it, when it comes to identifying it. It's something that we talk about more. So we are more progressive. There's a lot of work to be done. But in other countries, it is barely a conversation. Okay. Or at least I'll say that about in Guyana. Guyana, it is a huge issue. Physical domestic violence and sexual violence is a huge issue in Guyana. I had a student, she was actually our tour guide when we all got to all the teachers that got there. She was the one who would show us around the different parts of the town, and where we could purchase things from, where we could get things from, whoever, whatever. And she's a great woman. She was in her early 40s, and it came out eventually, after talking with her and her missing classes here and there, coming in with bruises. We ended up finding out that this woman, who had two children, was being physically abused in her home by her husband. She was getting beat on the regular. Okay. And when she went to the pastor, now this is how backwards it is there. When she went to her pastor and she said, I'm my husband is hitting me. He's hurting me. Okay. He's really hurting me. Her pastor called the husband over and asked the husband, like, what is she doing? What is she doing that she needs to do better? So you'll stop hitting her. Like why is she acting this way? Okay.
So I would like to pause there
Mm-hmm.
and and talk about how that ideology and that thought process is
Mm-hmm.
transferred over here to the States now. Because although we are Caribbean and we're here in the States and we have all these resources, that doesn't necessarily mean we use them.
That's
And
true.
it's because of our culture, like you said. uh if this abuse is happening, there must be a reason for it. There must be some reason as to why the pain that's being inflicted on you is happening. It must be warranted in some way, shape,
Right.
or
What
form.
is she doing to deserve it?
Exactly. So there's a thing like that, Caribbean parents have, and within the African American community have, where it's like, don't talk about our business outside. Don't talk about our business outside the home. Don't talk about what you're dealing with. Yeah, I know your brother is slapping you at home, but we're gonna deal with it at home. But it's not being really dealt with. Or I know your father's beating us, but let's deal with it at home, and it's not being dealt with.
No, it's not.
And it's
There's no
and
dealing
it's
with it.
exactly, it's part of the culture. So it's it's really hard and difficult to break that thought process. So I think I wanted to ask you, what are some ways, and I'll talk about some ways I've seen progression within the Caribbean and African American community, how that cycle has been broken, and what measures are taking for that cycle to be broken, as far as people speaking out and creating a safe space for people to speak out and receive help. So I wanted to ask you, what have you seen? I know there's a lot of work to be done, but there has been some type of progress. So I wanted to ask you, what progress have you seen? But what ways do you think that we could improve in the household? Because this is what this conversation is about. Is talking about the language and how things are handled within the household,
Hmm.
and how could it be improved through the culture. Because you got to understand, the wall that we are trying to push past, the mountain that we're trying to climb over, is our culture.
Okay, so there are some things that have changed that have made a huge difference. One of the things that has made a huge difference, Frankie, is just that all teachers, educators, facilitators are mandated reporters, right? So that means that if we are privy to any information about what's happening in the household, in a household that is involves domestic violence, sexual abuse, of any sort, or any form of grave misconduct, we are to notify some form of authority. And that can be a social worker, that can be any kind of child protective agencies, or it can even be the police, depending on
Right.
the severity, right? So that's one thing that has made a huge difference. Unfortunately, when it comes to the adults in the situation, they're a huge part of the problem because they're the ones that have already been programmed to accept this behavior, right? So they're programmed to say, you know what, I just need to accept my fate. This is what I'm dealing with. I'm just going to be, he's just going to hit me like there's no getting out of it. I'm just going to have to be nicer. I'm going to have to do better, and do what I can to avoid that kind of abuse, right? That is a lot of people's mindset when it comes to physical and verbal abuse, right? So that is kind of what happens. So because adults are like the best way to get through is through the child, right? It's to find out, hey, is everything okay at home? Is to kind of read the way the child is behaving, because generally in situations where there is abuse happening at home, it creates a lot of emotional stress for children, and children are not as capable of hiding it and ignoring it and acting like everything's okay as adults are.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so
Right.
generally, when you see a child behaving differently in school, whether it's acting out more, whether it's being more silent, and they're usually more playful and active, you can sense a child's energy change and shift. And when
Right.
that happens, that is an opportunity to try to say, hey, is everything okay? What's going on? A lot of times kids will not talk about it unless you really start to ask them the right questions and help them to understand that this is a safe space to talk about this. Okay. So for the most part, hold that thought. I see you. I see you took a breath like you wanted to say something. But for the most part, so one of the good things that has happened is that now there are more social workers in schools. Every school has counselors and therapists, and teachers are also receiving training on how to identify these emotional and psychological and physical cues to tell them that something might not be up, as opposed to, oh, this kid is just talkative, or this kid is just acting bad, or this kid just doesn't try, is just always sleeping in class. Being able to see that some of these things are actually ways to deal with stress and trauma. So I think
Right.
making more progress in trying to educate folks on what it looks like in children has been very helpful, in being able to identify some of these things happening in the home.
Right. So that is with the obvious issues, the issues that are so much apparent, so much abrasive, and it's so prevalent. It's so on the front end of things. I want to ask the same question: how do we infiltrate? How do we catch the sly sayings, the demeaning language,
Mm.
the passive aggressive stuff that are being said to students, for them to understand it as their culture? Oh, I'm just Haitian. That's how Haitian mothers talk. Oh, I'm just Grenadian. That's how Grenadian parents talk. Oh, this is how our culture is. When in fact, the language that is being used and the sayings that are being used are very destructive. So
Absolutely.
how do we combat that? There's no marks, there's no trauma there because it's a cultural thing. How
Mm.
do we, not to say combat culture, because culture is rich in everything that it I love culture. I love the different cultures and how everybody's able to bring a little bit of piece of them to the world, into America. But also there are some negative things. There's some very dark places in our culture, dark pieces in our culture that
Hmm.
nobody really realizes, and it's hard to, how do I say this? It's hard to address those
And
issues
expose those things, right?
and expose exactly. So how have you identified that one? If with one of your students or one of the along your travels along the world, how have you identified that in different cultures? Also, how have you dealt with it if you've seen it When you have seen it, how have you dealt with it, and what is a good practice of dealing with it?
That's a really good question, Frankie. And you bring up so many good points. So when it comes to this, right, I feel like it's like a very universal way to handle certain things. It's the way that you should handle bullying if you witness bullying happening. It's the way that you should handle acts of racism when you see it happening, whether it's your mom saying something. If you're a white person and you hear your mom say something that's just ridiculous or ignorant or extremely racist, it's checking them. It's to making the
Mm,
opportunity to check people when they behave a certain way. Now there's I think, what is it called, there's three types of people in a situation like that, right? there's
right.
the there's the person that's doing it, the offender. There's the victim, who's the one that's receiving it. And then you have the option of being a bystander or an
Mm-hmm.
upstander. Okay, so a
Mm-hmm.
bystander sees it happening, don't do nothing. They just kind of like either it's not my business, or I don't want to get in trouble, or
Right.
I don't want to stir the pot, or whatever. All
Exactly.
the different ways that we have allowed ourselves to feel okay with not getting involved, right? Because that's another cultural thing. Is it ain't my
Mm,
business, you know what I'm saying? So we got to break that as well. That it ain't my business, it ain't my problem, ain't nobody. I got to mind my own. We need to kill that, because the fact is we need to confront these things when we see it. We need to check people on these things, because there's too much nonsense happening even in our own families, and we're not saying nothing about it. Okay, so that's one side of it, right? So
mm-hmm.
yes, I think I even lost my point getting too passionate about this.
No, no, if you
Dang.
like, I would like to build on that point actually, because
Okay.
I don't want to skate over something you said. You said, if you see somebody say something, you got to be able to call it out. How do you call out your mother or your auntie when you are younger and you're not, you don't want to be disrespectful? How do we create a safe space to check the destructive language within our culture? How do we do that? How do we do that? Like it's hard because
Mm,
I was raised to be very respectful. I'm raising my sons to be extremely respectful. I give them something, they say thank you. When grown people are talking, you don't say anything. Like, well, you only speak when spoken to. So
mm.
with these ideologies, they are good in some instances, but in the situations of abuse, verbal abuse and emotional abuse, you
They
take
are
those
passive.
teachings.
They can be
Exactly, you
very
take those,
passive.
and that's where we come to the context of this conversation. We need to tear that down, or make it, apply it when appropriate. Is it appropriate to be quiet when your mother is tearing down your sister, or your father is tearing down your brother or your sister? Is it appropriate to be quiet when you know is it appropriate to be quiet when you're seeing destructive, sly language? Because it starts with the small things. Like we talk about the hitting, and we talk about the abrasive, calling people out their name, and and it's talking down to people. But it starts with the underlining language that we allow to slide by, and we need to attack that.
Yes.
Um, we have a couple of questions coming in the chat, but we're gonna get to that shortly. But how do we attack that? How do we create that space? There are elders. Some of these people who are the oppressors are our elders. They are
Mhm.
our grandmothers. There are fathers. There are older siblings. How do we create a safe place in our culture, our Black culture, our Caribbean culture, my Haitian culture, your Grenadian culture? How do we create that space?
Okay. So the first thing we have to accept is the possibility, as in most cases where you check anyone about anything, that people are going to be defensive. That's just what
Mm-hmm.
happens. The first thing is, what do you? Oh, I'm not even. What do you mean? I didn't even mean it like that. Like, why are you coming at me, right? So you have to
Mm-hmm.
accept that and it doesn't matter if you yell it at them, if you say it softly. If someone is being corrected, generally they feel attacked.
Right.
Okay, you know what I'm saying?
Exactly.
So the fact is that um, and when you asked me, I was assuming you were talking about us being younger adults towards our siblings, our parents, etc. Because when you get older, I believe it is our responsibility. It's our responsibility to have the conversations with our parents and tell them what
Yes.
tell them what their nature and what their behavior towards us, how it impacted us, and how it was
Hmm.
wrong.
Right.
Okay, that's the first
Right.
thing. And second, like I said, you have to have those conversations with the kids because they are the next generation. Okay, they're the ones that are going to be, growing up and then having kids. And so, in order to break the cycles of those abuses, of those slight things that people say that aren't okay, we have to make them aware that it's not okay. And
Yeah.
but as far as in the house, like when it's happening as a kid, I honestly can't answer that for you because I didn't know what to do. In my head, that's my superior and this is wrong. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And I
Right.
remember one time I did speak out against it. I spoke out against it. And I remember my dad, I forgot what he did. I don't think he hit me, but he screamed at me. But I was so right. It was so obvious that
Right.
what I was saying was correct and what how he was behaving was incorrect.
Hmm.
And everyone was around. And eventually, like maybe an hour later, he called me aside and said, I'm really, really sorry. He said, I'm sorry that I got upset with you, and but I mean, that's not a lot of parents. There are not a lot of parents that well, I shouldn't say there are not a lot of parents. I haven't
Right.
experienced many parents that are open to apologizing for their
I,
behavior.
I understand. There's actually there's a great question that the August Project LLC had brought up on our YouTube platform. It's saying, what are some of the actionable things we
Mm,
can do to undo our own trauma in order to help others? And I think you just answered it. I think it's with the experiences that we have dealt with as growing up in a Caribbean household, it's important for us to speak to, because right now, I can tell you right now, the way my father raised me, he is not raising my 10-year-old brother. There's a lot more love. There's a lot of more positive reinforcement
compassion.
because exactly because he has seen the effect. Although he was able to catch it, and do some fixing, but he realized if he didn't start with the way if he didn't start if he started at a better place with my 10-year-old brother than he did with us, there will be progression, and there is progression because this kid is amazing. He doesn't feel like there's anything he can't do, and there's just a light that shines on this young man that I didn't have at 10 years old. I mean, I was a joyous kid, but the level of optimism that he has that's reinforced by his parents is amazing. And it's not to say my father didn't give that. It's just trial and error. But I
Right,
think it's up to us to, like the August Project said, to bring
uh,
it back and bring our experience to our parents, bring our experience to our peers as they raise their children. Let them
right,
know if that was done to us, it didn't work. Let's do something different. It's
right.
not
So
the process doesn't work.
I want to add to that, that to partly answer that question. First of all, that's a great question. Um, so there's two things that I would encourage. The first thing is just identifying the areas that have really affected you, right? Like seeing it within yourself. Now that takes a lot of work. Some people are not very self-aware naturally, so you actually have to sit down and go through. These are the things I do now. Why do I do these things? Um, and finding the and seeing the like the I can't think of the word right now, but seeing the connection. There we go. Seeing the connection between like the things you do that are not okay or the things that you experience that are that you have experienced that are traumatic and how they impact the way you operate, right? So the first thing is identifying those things. The second thing is
Right.
educating yourself, right? Educating yourself on trauma, educating yourself on how your upbringing affected you, right? So that you can then do differently by those around you. Okay. The other thing I think you should do is therapy. Let me tell you something. My opinion, and I stand by this, I say this, every Black person in America should attend therapy. Period. This country, we're literally living in a country that was set up to not benefit us in any way, like from the beginning, including the constitutional laws that still exist. All these laws that are in effect right now, most of them in the Constitution were created before, while we were still slaves. So how can we feel that those are laws that are meant to protect and serve us when we weren't
Mhm.
even a part of the conversation when these laws were having where we're being
Right.
put together? Okay,
Right.
so just for
Understood.
that very thing in and of itself, right? We need to be experiencing that to deal with some of the things that we deal with on a regular basis, just being Black in America. So then you
Right.
add on top of that all the different traumas that we experience growing up with family, cultural, etc. So therapy is gonna make a difference. Okay, I think
Hmm.
that that's the thing that helps you to be clear about what you've experienced and how you can be a better person based on that. And one thing that they teach you, or that I've learned from a psychologist on YouTube, is she talks about reparenting. So the parenting that you experienced as a kid, and the things that were hard about it, and things were not okay about it, and then how to reparent yourself now that you're an adult, the way that you needed to be parented as a kid, so that you can operate better in society. So that's just some suggestions that I will give around working towards the undoing of your own traumas.
That was an amazing question. I want to pivot a little bit. We're talking about the home. We're talking about the passive language in the home and how that kind of stems off and grows. Both of us, we have extensive resumes in the music industry, right?
Yeah.
You're a songwriter, and you understand what that means to be a songwriter. Um, what would you say our music, the culture of our music, and I'm not just talking about
Mm.
hip hop. I'm talking about dance hall. I'm talking about compa. I'm talking about soca. I'm talking about all the Labor Day parade thing. I'm talking about all of those good music that have these slight undertones of derogatory and demeaning
And
language
misogyny,
and
absolutely.
misogyny. We accept it because it's a good tune. It's a great tune. We can have fun to it. But at the same time, what are we dancing to? What are
Oh,
we celebrating to? Let's talk a little bit about how that is passive language. Let's talk a little bit how about it's hard for us to pinpoint that. Let's talk about that for a little bit.
absolutely. So we talked a little bit about the B word, right? But it's so much more than that. Like I wrote a couple things down, but like songs about giving women drugs before having sex with them. Okay, that's another one. Telling women that they gotta not only have sex with me, but not have sex with him, but have sex with his friend too. These are all ways that we okay, that just different ways that we can like that we have been allowing ourselves to be demeaned in the music, right? So like
Hmm.
I said, oh, another one, telling women that yeah, I'll get it in with you, but like I'm not gonna wife you because we don't love them hoes. Now these are like actual lyrics, one, but two, like it's also just an understanding, right? Bros before hoes,
Hmm.
like just that concept, like it's disgusting. You know what I'm saying? And the fact is that if you expect if we expect our women to feel protected, especially Black women, right? If you expect us to feel protected and feel valued, like how can the pillars of music, the folks that are making millions of dollars, the folks that are the Black rappers that are like, and yes, dance hall artists as well, that are making all these
Hmm.
songs, are saying these terrible things about women, right? Like when are we going to be put on a pedestal? Like when are we going to be respected for being the mothers of our nation? So I mean,
Right.
so that's one thing I wanted to point out. And another thing I wanted to say about it, right, is that I understand that to some degree women have been complicit in this, in the fact that we have allowed it and accepted it. But that's in part because it's almost like that's what society gave us. Okay, I grew up hearing these things and seeing everybody dancing to it, men and women. everybody rocking out, like as opposed to like, what is this nonsense on the radio? Cut
Right.
this off. What? Oh my
Right.
God. And women saying, I'm not going to his concert the way he talking about me. You know, so
So
it's like,
so
yeah.
now let me chime in on that a little bit. Now you have your people, when there are people who bring that up, because I've seen this happen. We were listening to a song called that even the name is derogatory. The PG version is called Hot Walk. Do you know that dance hall? Rolls eyes.
Hey,
But
let me tell you something. I'm not gonna act holy. Listen, I danced many times to that song. I bust a wine to that song many, many
right,
times.
right. So someone who was kind of just tired of that language said, "Y'all don't see what they're saying? Like, I don't understand why y'all playing this music." And everyone in unison, like a choir, said, "Why are you being a wet blanket? Why?" Just started attacking this person, saying, it's just
Oh.
music. It's just a good time. So do we
Mhm.
give a pass to music in the language, in the derogatory language that they use? How do we hold these musicians accountable? As a songwriter, you're a songwriter. As a songwriter, how do you be responsible in making sure that your language is not demeaning to neither male nor female or anyone to that fact? How is it boring to just have uplifting music all the time, all the time? Because some people enjoy the negative. Some people enjoy the negative, enjoy the music about demeaning women, demeaning men, because now it goes both ways. It
Yes,
goes
it
both
does.
ways.
And that was
Because
the thing. Yep. Because now women are like, yo, no, 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 no. You know what? If
exactly,
he's gonna sleep with me and think that he's not gonna marry me, then I'm gonna get some money off of him. He's not gonna get
exactly.
it for free. So now you have like this whole, oh gosh, it's this whole thing, which honestly, Frankie, that would be a whole nother hour conversation.
A
Okay.
whole nother hour conversation. As a matter of fact, I want to bring this. The August Project brought up another great question. Could we bring that to the screen real fast? It says, "What's the compromise between reality and the ideal?" For example, in these cultures, women are
Oh,
deemed
yeah.
inferior. How do we get the ideal without running out without ruining the fun, or is that a non-negotiable? Just like we were talking about, how do we have fun still but take out the negative from the music? How do we
Okay.
like strain it, almost like you're making spaghetti? You kind of keep the positive and you throw out the nasty water so you can have some goodness. Does that take out the fun? I don't want to
Okay.
be a
So
preacher
here's
on
the
here,
deal,
but you know
right?
what I
We
mean?
have to hold these artists accountable. And I know that sounds like,
How?
right, that sounds like, well, how? Well, yeah. I mean, the fact of the matter is, when those songs come out, when it's we have to speak up about it. Okay, the same way we have to speak up about injustices in our daily lives, the same way we have to speak up about like rape culture and like tearing down the breaking down the concept of this patriarchal like way of being, like all these things you have to like speak up. You can't just expect it to change without being a part of that change. Okay, now
Right, right,
now in some cases it has changed. In some cases, I mean, look, people gonna talk about sex. That's just what people gonna talk about, because guess what? People are doing sex. Every minute of every second of every day, somebody is having sex. Somebody having sex right now. Okay? Probably a million people. There's 7 billion people in the world. Okay, so people gonna talk about that, right? So that we're not gonna get away from people talking about things that are taboo or make us uncomfortable. But when it comes to respect, when it comes to blatant disrespect towards people, we have to draw the line. So like,
right.
so for example, I realize soca songs have moved in a direction away from that misogyny and that discourse, and have moved towards like, we having fun, we partying, we drinking, we
Right,
celebrating.
right,
Okay, it had a pivot. I'm not entirely sure what
right.
what caused that pivot, but it happened. You know what I'm saying? And it's like, okay, here we go. So
Right.
the fact is that it could have been that, people just, I don't know if it was something that people talked about together. I don't know if it was a delegation. They said, look, man, we got to do more uplifting music. We got to do more something for everyone, not just for the men. I
Right.
don't know. But the fact is that
Right. Right.
there's power in speaking up.
There
So
is
that's
power in speaking up.
so that's how you have to do it. When by that
And,
I'm like, complain about it, post about it, put up stuff at the person. Listen,
right.
there's power
Right.
in Black Twitter. Okay, Black Twitter is the reason why the Popeyes chicken sandwich is the number one chicken sandwich in the country, because two random people just started arguing about whether Chick-fil-A was better than Popeyes on Black Twitter. Think about that. They just made a country millions of dollars off of a couple of tweets that went viral. So if we want to create change,
So
talk about it.
so how do we start? So to talk about it, we got to get the conversation started. So how do we get the conversation started in our hip hop culture? Because our hip hop culture kind of just took a hard left turn into just all music is demeaning. Most music. Let me not say all music, because there's some great uplifting music. Even some of the great, like some of the classic hip hops, Notorious B.I.G., Tupac, Big L, like the greats, like they have some very old dirty bastard has some very demeaning language, not only to women but to their fellow man, and it's great music for what the time was, but we shouldn't allow it. How do we get the conversation started to moving forward where we're saying this is not okay? I know Twitter and social media is one point, but how do we establish that within the home, within the household? Because that's
Yeah,
where this conversation is. And the
we're
reason
gonna.
why
Go ahead. I'm
I was
sorry.
going to say no, it's fine. The reason why I'm bringing this up is because music is in the home, and you're shaped by the music you hear within your home.
Absolutely.
I was shaped by Haitian music, Aretha Franklin, CD 101.9, that classical station my dad always played for what reason I don't know. I was shaped by this music, but I was also shaped by the music my cousins used to bring into the house. The
Mm-hmm.
Notorious B.I.G., the Tupac, the Lil Kim, the Foxy
Absolutely.
Brown. I was shaped by that. And what people don't understand is words matter, and words affect and shape your character. How
Absolutely.
do we speak out against that
So
Within the home?
point it out. Like, you heard what that? Did you hear what he just said? And like, actually repeat the words, because sometimes when you hear the words amidst a good beat and it's just a vibe and it's real rhythmic, it's like, I slid it in even though she said no. Wait, what? What did he just say? Did he just
Exactly.
rape on the track? Okay.
Exactly.
Sometimes you have to like
Exactly.
make people aware of what is being said. Okay. And I mean, like, that's the way to do it. It's like you heard what was just said? Yeah. Mm-mm. You don't need to keep hearing that over and over again. I mean, you can't tell people what to do, because
Right.
people could not tell me not to listen to Busta Rhymes. People could not tell me not to listen to Jay-Z when I was
Right.
growing up, because that was what was in, that's what was cool. So part of it is like, you do your best. You do your best to give people better options of what to listen to. But honestly, it's like, it's so many different things. It's like we want to have this like one concise solution,
Right.
to this problem, but it's like so many different factors that come into play. You know what I'm saying? Like, I mean, this type of music, these type of things being said has been in our music for decades.
Mm-hmm.
Decades. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's gonna take some serious like redirecting, and also part of it is that the good music that doesn't have that is not the music that rises to the top, and that is purposefully done. Let me tell you something: the powers that be, the folks that give people a chance, they let them play the nonsense. They bring the nonsense music, the stuff, and by nonsense I don't mean that the music doesn't have value. I just mean that it has some bad. It's music with bad, like you know what I'm talking about. The music that we're talking about, the
Right.
derogatory music, the music that is
The destructive language with the destructive language. Right.
destructive language music. That's the one that comes to the top. I remember Cardi B said it. She was like, "Yo, I put out a song that was like, it's called Careful." It was the one song where she was talking about real stuff. She was talking about loving someone and them
Mhm.
hurting her or whatever. And they didn't want to really present that song. Her label, all of them, they were like, "Look, this is not what people want. We're gonna put out the stuff about popping PUSSY and doing this and that.
Mhm.
That's what people want to hear." And she was like, "Okay, I mean, I can do more than that, but I'm gonna do what the people want." But it's really not just what the people want. It's the way that they want us to be viewed. Okay,
Right.
and
Right.
so you gotta remember that it is racist and oppressive folks at the top making sure that the visual
Mhm.
that they give of Black people is not a positive and uplifting one. So we have to
Right.
stop allowing ourselves to be exploited for money and being a poor representation of what the Black woman and the Black man are, because they will
Right.
take advantage
Right.
of it.
Exactly. I just want to another thing I want to point out is an artist that has showed a pivotal change and even
Oh yeah.
used the word that we're talking about, bitch, to Gail, Snoop Dogg. He even used that word to her and called her that in his hurt and in his pain. He went to what he knew and he
Mhm.
called her a B word. Then later, maybe a couple of weeks or a couple of months later, a month or two later, he went on Red Table Talk to talk with Jada, her mother, and her daughter to talk about how sorry he was about using the word, but he still shared his sentiment. So he shared his sentiment about why he used that word. I think it's important for the artists themselves to be aware of what's going on, as Snoop was aware. He was aware that the word he used was not acceptable. He knew that it wasn't acceptable. He knew that he did wrong. He reached out. He said he made it his public apology,
Mhm.
and we need more of that type of accountability
Yes, absolutely.
in the music, and it's not just on a platform, but within the music. And they touched a little bit about that. We're 2 minutes out, and I just wanted to say this in closing, is that the reason why we're having this conversation because everything starts at the home, from the
Yes.
smallest saying to the largest saying, to what you allow your children to listen to what you allow your whoever's in your household, what you allow them to listen to, music, what programs you allow them to watch, and what friends you allow your children to have, because friends can bring that destructive language within the household. You have to protect your household. You have to be very observant with the language that is being spoken within your household. And as mentioned in this conversation here today, we have to call it out. So everybody who has watched this live, everyone who is attending this series of domestic violence, it starts at home, and we
Yeah.
have to nip it in the bud with all the slicing, all the undertones, and we have to address it, because if we can kill it before it even grows, we don't even get to the bigger situations.
Right. Right. Absolutely.
Well,
Absolutely.
we have run out of time. Twyla, Joy, you have been a pleasure. Thank you so much for attending this Hack TV segment of Who You Calling a Bleep. Uh, you have given some great insight. We want to say thank you to our sponsors. We want to say thank you to the August Project. Thank you to Verizon, and thank you to the Haitian American Caucus. We will be having another segment coming up soon. Please watch all our social media handles for the next session, the next episode that we have. It was a pleasure seeing everybody. Thank you and have a great evening.
Thank you. Bye.